I call this a rose ring, and if it doesn't look as attractive as you want it to be, you can call it a cabbage. But we're going to be creating this sort of flower ring. And here it is. I've used one bead at the center, and it's like a sort of flower petals around it. And you can make it as big as you want. I'm using some gorgeous pink opal for that one, and I've also got some beautiful topaz beads from Charmers Gems. I think I'll use the topaz to show you this one. So the amount of wire is really, it's an arm's length here, and that will determine how big the flower is going to be. So if you want something small, use less wire. Now I'm putting the center of the wire and wrapping it around my mandrel a couple of times so that I end up with 3 wires at the back. So that's my ring size. I've got 3 wires at the back, and the rest of the wire is protruding at the front. And then I twist it to connect it. So it's connected together at the ring size that I want. And I just give it a little tap with my hammer on my ring mandrel to secure it there so it doesn't slide around everywhere. And this is when I introduce the bead. So whatever bead you're going to use, it could be much bigger than my tiny little 6mm topaz. But, if you want something chunky, just use something bigger. But a small bead is best for this style. And then bring the wires around as close as you can get them around that bead. You want to hug it with the wire. So just spend a bit of time. The wire won't want to naturally go around in such a small thing. So you need little tiny movements to pull it. Use your pliers and just gently manipulate the whole, both the wires. You want them both to go around, but you don't want them to go behind the bead. So there you can see it's, sort of gone around and framed the bead. A bit like when you're making a spiral, you are pushing both of those beads around. This is going to be the center or the nucleus of the flower. So you don't want that bit to be too big because you want, don't go on and on going round and round, unless you want that to be, that's a different type of ring and you can create rings like that. But now with the 2 ends, you just twist and do this randomly. Doesn't have to be neat. You want it to sort of, some might be bigger, some might be smaller. Don't worry about the unevenness of those twists. Once you've got that twisted wire with the ends, you just don't do it right to the end. Then bring the twisted wire again around that spiral that you've created around the bead, and that will form the petals. So you can see if you had a lot more wire, it would be a much bigger flower. And then leave it with 1 wire resting on one side of the flower and the other on the other side of the rose. So take it off your mandrel once you've got the 2 ends left and use those to secure just by the little wire rose that you've created. So just do this gently. Don't pull too quickly because you can misshape everything if you tug too hard. So it's just a gentle bind and don't over bind. And that secures it at one side. And then you're going to take the other end and secure it round on the other side. So if you had a lot more wire, you could make a spiral there. You've seen me do that before, and that gives another decorative detail. So I'm just cutting the other wire down to the same length because it's much easier to work with a shorter wire when you're wrapping than a very long piece that you have to bring through the shank and around. So there we go, just another little bind and then cut off. And I do try and keep the cut off wires on the outside so that when I slide my finger through, there's no spikiness, there's no cut ends. And now it's just a question of putting it back on the ring stick, getting the shape back, using the hammer because once you've done some bindings, it gets smaller. So you want to stretch it again by hammering the back Obviously you don't want to hammer the front because you're going to smash the bead. So you can just go to the sides and the back, and you can see how that's stretching it, making it a little bit bigger, and it's work hardening it as well. And if that misshapes any of your bindings, just go back, always spend a bit more time at the end for the finishing. I know it doesn't take long to make a ring like this, like these bead rings, but it's the finishing that matters. And that's what the back should look like. The 3 wires, you've got the rose, and you've got your lovely little center bead. So you can do this in any sort of coloured wires that you want, and add any beads at the center. So have fun making your rose rings.